Hi, this is Dr. Gail, and this is a little video explanation about the differences between summarization, analysis, and interpretation. Because these are three concepts that you're going to have to do in week two's assignment. So let me take you to week two's assignment. And this is the norm referenced assessment. You need to administer, first of all, you need to administer, no one else, not the computer, you. And analyze and interpret the results and make changes to the intervention plan. Okay? Now let me take you to the other assignment. In this assignment, it's worded just a little bit differently. It says write a 250 word explanation of your findings. So that is, you can interpret it different ways. You can say, well, an explanation is a statement of your findings from the QRI, including the student's strengths and needs. But it doesn't really say to analyze anything. You could literally list the strengths and list the needs. But in order to get the needs, you need to know what the strengths mean and what the needs are. I mean, it doesn't really tell you anything. The needs doesn't really tell you anything. And I'm going to get into this just a little bit later. So anyhow, that's what you're doing there. Okay, now let me take you to the presentation and let's go into the next slide. So a summarization is a brief overview. That's a statement of what your findings are. The student received 10 out of 20, 10 words out of 20 words, cite words correctly. And so that's a summarization. The dictionary definition is, it's covering the main points. The main points would be 10 out of 20. The student received, that meant that the student received 10 words correctly out of 20 for sight words. That would be a summary. Or better yet, if you were to take well, let's just use that. We're just going to use that. So then, coming back to the presentation, it's the main points, the author's ideas. So these are your ideas, so your interpretation, not your interpretation, but you are restating what the test score gave you. That's all you're doing. So the author in this instance is the results from the test. That's the author. Those are the results that it just gives you. It gives you 10 out of 20. Or when you're scoring the test, it comes out 10 out of 20. That's what it is. Listing ideas or data, 10 out of 20. 10 sight words out of 20 sight words, correct. That's summarization. And now, but you're not required to do this really, except for on the first one. And I'm not quite sure why that is, because you certainly can analyze and interpret data from that informal assessment. In fact, people do it all the time, but that's not really the requirement. The requirement is to list the strengths and the needs. Now, that's the strengths and the needs in the assessment. So let's take the 10 out of 20. You might say the student was able, with the words that they got correct, they said them out real immediately. They knew them instantly. The needs were the words that the need is not they need to have more practice in sight words. That's not the need. The need is to understand what they need with relationship to the sight words. And so that's where an analysis comes in and an interpretation. You can, even though it says needs and it does not say analysis and interpretation, analysis and interpretation is part of the needs. There's no way you can come up with needs in the assignment unless you understand what the student needs in relation to what is taking place in that test for that sight word test. It's not that they need more help in sight words. What specifically do they need with regards to the sight words? Because it's clear that 50% of the time they're able to throw the words out immediately. So what is taking place with that other 50% that creates a need? That's a gap. So let's talk about the next step, which is analysis and interpretation. So the definition for an analysis is a detailed examination. And that's what I just said. You have to dig deeper. It's not at face value. If you were to say the student needs more practice with sight words, that's not an analysis. That's a summarization. That's it's an assumption. It's not based on anything. And so it's a detailed examination of something. So you might say to yourself, well, okay, the student got 10 words, sight words correct out of 20. So what was going on? Well, you know that they got the information, the 10 of the words very quickly. So you analyze the words a bit. What is it about these 10 words that are in common? Well, maybe they're shorter. Maybe they're words that the student has actually used in their reading. Maybe they are struggling readers. Maybe they're tier 2. And maybe they're really not at that tier 3 stage. And so they would not have had that experience yet. So that you're not going to hold that against them if they haven't had any experience on it. So that's the analysis you do. You try to determine what it is about the words that they did get correctly, what's taking place there, and the words that they did not get correctly. Let's say the words they did not get correctly, they said the word first incorrectly and then corrected themselves. It would still be counted wrong. It's certainly in a norm referenced assessment. So it sounds like now they're just unsure about that. So that is the analysis part. So then coming back to the presentation, it's a detailed view of the author's ideas, digging deeper, picking the ideas apart based on research and your understanding. What can you find that supports what you're thinking about based on research, at least with regards to an assignment at Grand Canyon University? If you're doing an analysis at school, in an actual practice, it'd be based on your understanding and not just your misunderstanding, but your understanding of what is factual. So an interpretation, what is an interpretation? To explain or tell the meaning of. So the analysis is going on in your head. Now the interpretation, you have to share that piece with someone else. You're making meaning. You're presenting in understandable terms, and you're bringing meaning to the results. Your idea is based on the facts. What does this mean? So you don't say to your parents or to the team, you don't say, well, they got 10 out of 20, and so that means that in order to reach 20, we're going to keep practicing those same words over and over again, or similar words. We're going to just keep practicing sight words every day, and the student will get it. Well, probably not, maybe, but probably not. So what is it that you have to do to make that work? That was that part of the analysis. But how do you explain that to the parent or to the team? So they're related, but not quite the same. This is in your head, this is outward. This is input, this is output. So then the meaning of something. What does 10 out of 20 really mean? The explanation of the analysis. So that's what you need to do. And you just want to make sure that in this assignment, the strengths will be somewhat clear, but not necessarily. The strengths are not necessarily what they got right and what they got right. That's not, and the needs are not necessarily what do they need to do. The need is, how do you get to that point? And so based on this, you're going to create your intervention plan. And that's why it's a better idea to do this one first and then do the norm referenced assessment, because you're going to create an intervention plan based on what you know from the informal assessment. Then you're going to do this. You're going to get more detailed information. And so would you modify this piece here? This will automatically give you more information because of the way the test scores are. And you do need to understand what the test scores mean. So if you have any questions about that, just let me know.